Hi there, my name is Darren Alff, and I just returned from 5 months of travel in Peru. I thought I'd sit down for 8 to 10 minutes or so and talk about my trip, try to sum it all up in a few brief moments. Obviously I'm recording this for a website about bicycle touring, but I didn't go to Peru with a bicycle. It was an untraditional bike tour, if you may. I went there with a regular backpack, like a traditional round-the-world backpacker, with the plan of renting bicycles in various cities as I went along. Now, I did indeed rent a number of bicycles in various cities across Peru. I even bought a bicycle at one point, a tricycle, in fact, a tricycle taxi cab, in fact. So I did do a little biking, but not nearly as much as I wanted to, and there was a reason for that. Part of it was that the bicycles that I found in Peru were pretty darn junky, and these would be really like $100 bicycles, basically, 100 US dollars, maybe 300 Peruvian soles. Really cheap bicycles with really cheap parts. And so riding them wasn't a whole lot of fun, and I did rent a couple of these bicycles throughout my trip, but I didn't really do a whole lot with them because the bicycles were so limited in their physical capabilities, I guess you could say. So that was interesting. I mean, the reason I went to Peru without the bike was to try going on a trip and renting bicycles along the way. I just wanted to see what kind of bikes I would find, how difficult it would be to rent these bikes, how much they would cost, etc., etc. What I found in Peru was that for the most part the bikes are terrible. There are few bike shops that actually do rent out bicycles. It depends on what city you're in. Juarez, Peru, for example, which is a big outdoor mecca just north of Lima, there's a number of companies that rent bicycles there, but in my opinion, the price for the rentals is too high. They're American prices in a Peruvian country, and after 5 months in Peru, being told that this, renting a bicycle would cost me 100 soles even, which would be about $35 maybe for the day, it just seemed outrageously ridiculous to pay that much money for a one-day mountain bike rental, for example. So anyways, I just thought I'd throw that out there, that I went to Peru. I wasn't really bicycle touring like I would normally call a bicycle tour. I was renting bikes and even bought a bike at one point. Maybe I should talk about buying that bicycle now. When I was in Puno, Peru, I bought a tricycle taxi cab for 250 soles, which is about 90 US dollars. That's 90 US dollars. And these bicycles or tricycles are used all over Peru, but in Puno they're incredibly they're very much a part of the city, is what I'm trying to say. Everybody in Puno has a tricycle, and they have 2 seats up in the front. These tricycle taxi cabs do, to carry passengers or a passenger and their belongings. And then on the back of the tricycle is the person who is pedaling the thing. So I got the crazy idea that I was going to buy this tricycle in Puno and ride it 250 miles north to Cusco, Cusco is like the big tourist city in Puno, or in Peru, where the majority of the tourists are. So anyways, this was my idea. Unfortunately, I bought the thing. It was a complete piece of junk, which is why it cost $90. The thing probably weighed about 125 pounds, maybe more, I don't know. It was really heavy. It had 2 motorcycle wheels on the front and a regular bicycle wheel in the back. And before I even took off from Puno, I put in about another $35 worth of repairs on the bike. Little things like getting new brake pad or changing the bottom bracket out. Unfortunately, all of the new parts that were put on my bike were just as bad as the bad parts that I had removed. So I think that money was probably a complete waste. But anyways, so I took off on this tricycle and I rode it for 2 days through the countryside in southern Peru, mainly through flat farmland. It was really quite beautiful, and if I'd been on a regular bicycle I would have been flying. The tricycle though was not. That's the easiest way to put it. It was so hard to ride that thing. It only had one gear, and the one gear that the tricycle did have was so high, like it was so hard to pedal, that even on flat ground I was practically pushing it more than I was pedaling. So 2 days of really, really hard riding. And then when I woke up on the third day, one of these front motorcycle wheels had a flat tire. I think I had run over a piece of glass or something, and throughout the night the thing had deflated. Well, I didn't have the tools to change this motorcycle tire with me. I had some tire levers, but the tire was in the wheel so tightly that I just couldn't get it out, and I was out in the middle of nowhere with no one to help me, no other tools around. So what I ended up doing was giving this tricycle taxi cab to one of these poor farm families that it was actually this family that let me sleep in their yard for the night. So for them it was like getting like a used car, maybe, giving somebody a used car. These people are incredibly poor and living off of incredibly low amounts of money. So to get a 250 Sole tricycle, and with I had also purchased a pump and some tools and a lock and things like that. So I gave it all to them, and they were just ecstatic. They asked me about 6 different times if it was true that I was giving them the tricycle. They thought that maybe I was just letting them borrow it, or that I was going to come back and get it later. They didn't. It took them 6 times for me to tell them that this is yours. You can have it. It's free. It's my gift to you. So anyways, that was kind of cool. What else should I talk about? Peru. I'll just talk about where I went. I started in Lima. I went to Nazca. I flew over the Nazca lines. A lot of people just go to Nazca for 1 day and don't do anything else, but Nazca was actually one of my favorite places that I went to in all of Peru. And if you like the desert, which I do, there's a lot of like cool hiking and stuff around Nazca in the mountains. There's some mummies and stuff that are really cool. You can go 4x4ing and sandboarding, which is like snowboarding but on sand. I did that. That was really fun. So I really like Nazca. If you're there, stay for at least 3 days. And then I went to Arequipa, and I was there for New Year's. Saw a big firework display, and in Arequipa I ended up staying in the apartment of a local who traded me some website design work for 3 weeks free rent, I guess, in his apartment, which drastically lowered my expenses that month, but it also gave me a huge amount of work that I had to do while I was in Arequipa. If I were to do it again, I don't know if I'd make that same deal, simply because the amount of website work that I did in Arequipa was worth this much, and the amount of lodging that I got was worth about this much. So when you make these trades, you can save a good amount of money, but make sure that what you're trading is of value. So anyways, then I went from, before I left Arequipa, the coolest thing I think I did in all of Peru was I climbed El Misti, which is the volcano right outside of Arequipa, Peru. And the summit is above 19,000 feet. And most people who climb this thing do it in a tour group with an organized tour leader. I didn't want to do that. I didn't want to pay the money, and I didn't want to be a part of a tour group and all that. So I climbed the thing on my own, off trail, kind of up the backside, and it took me 3 days, 2 days to get to the top and 1 day to get down. And it was just an awesome experience. After being in Peru for 2 months at that point, I was ready to get away from the city, all the Peru's so loud in the cities. People honking their horns, yelling, and fireworks going off all the time. So going climbing El Misti was definitely a highlight. It was just quiet, and I was able to do my own thing, and it was awesome. I went to Colca Canyon, which is also outside of Arequipa. This is a place where you see the terraces that are so famous in Peru. And I saw these giant flying condors, which was awesome. That was a good experience. For a lot of people, Colca Canyon's a highlight of their trip. I didn't think it was all that fantastic, to be honest, but it was definitely worth seeing. Then I went to Puno. Puno was probably my favorite area in all of Peru, even more than Machu Picchu and Cusco itself. Puno is on the edge of Lake Titicaca, which is the largest lake in all of South America, if I have my facts correct. And on this lake are these floating islands made of reeds that the locals have made. They basically throw a bunch of reeds in this lake, and they formed islands out of reeds that they then live on for free. It's pretty incredible to see, but it's so touristy now. It's kind of ridiculous. So yeah, so one of the highlights definitely was the street festival that happened in Puno. I just happened to be in the right place at the right time, and it was so cool to see this thing because the people were in these amazing costumes. They'd come from all over the immediate area surrounding Puno, and from what I understood, there were about 30,000 people participating in this parade through Puno. It seriously lasted like a whole day, this one parade, but it actually lasted like a week because before and after this parade, there were smaller parades and people were practicing their dances in the street. It just went on and on and on. I kind of got sick of it after a while, but it was a really cool experience. So that was definitely probably one of the highlights of my entire time in Peru. There were a number of cool things outside of Puno that are I should mention, I guess. The Siustani ruins, which is to the north, kind of. There's these giant stone funeral towers. And I camped there overnight, which was amazing. You aren't really supposed to camp there, but I negotiated with the guards and they let me camp there. It's on the edge of this like gigantic lake, and oh, it was awesome. I also went to the Gateway to the Gods, which was something I'd read about before I even went to Peru. It's something that I knew I wanted to see when I went to Peru. It's this giant stone door that's carved into a rock south of Puno. And the door itself maybe is not all that exciting, but the stones around the door were pretty amazing. So it took me one day to find this place and go on a hike and stuff. That was pretty cool. And then also there's the Kutimbu, it's been a while. Kutimbu ruins. I'm totally butchering the name, I think. But anyways, Kutimbu ruins south of Puno were also awesome. Just a short day trip outside of Puno. So if you're in Puno, those are the three things I would recommend you go see and do. From there, I rode the tricycle, 2 or 3 days outside of Puno, and then after giving the tricycle away, I walked 40 kilometers to the city of Juliaca. From there, I jumped on a bus, 8-hour bus ride up to Cusco, and I stayed in Cusco for a whole month. Now, that's definitely more than most people were spending in Cusco, which is amazing because some people fly all the way around the world and spend only a couple days in this city. I went to the tourist agency in Cusco, and they have this book that all the tourists sign, and they ask everybody to write down how long they're in Cusco for. Most of the dates on there said that these people from all over the world were only in Cusco for 2 days, 3 days, 4 days, maybe a couple people for 5 days. And then there was me, who wrote down 30 days. So it was very strange to be in a tourist city after the past 2.5 months or whatever. being in these cities where I was quite often the only tourist around, or one of a few tourists around. So Cusco was definitely touristy, which was nice in some ways because I had someone to talk to, and bad in other ways because the Peruvians are trying to get your money from the tourists. And there were many streets in Cusco. If you've ever been to Cusco, you probably know. But there's many streets in the touristy sections where you walk down the street and you are literally just hounded by hundreds of people trying to sell you whatever they're trying to sell you. Massages and blankets and belts and shoe shines and food, and oh, it gets so annoying, especially after a month. Most people are there only for a couple days. I was there for a month. I had to walk that gauntlet literally 1,000 times. It was crazy. So anyways, Cusco is a really, really pretty city. It's got the red rooftops, kind of like Prague or something, but in South America. Really, really cool. I went to Machu Picchu, and when I started making plans to go to Machu Picchu, my dad decided that he wanted to fly out from Southern California and go with me to Machu Picchu. So he was in Cusco with me for a week. We traveled to Machu Picchu, and I think for my dad at least, it was like the trip of a lifetime. I wasn't as impressed with Machu Picchu as I had expected to be. I think that after being in Peru for about 3 months at that time, I had by that point seen a number of ruins already, and I was kind of sick of seeing ruins at that point. But Machu Picchu was definitely impressive. Lots of tourists running around, which for me degraded the value of the experience, but still definitely worth seeing. What else? After I left Cusco, I took a bus, 22-hour bus, to Puerto Maldonado, which is a jungle city, and I went on a jungle tour there, which was interesting. I didn't really want to do a jungle tour, but it's really the only way to see the jungle in this part of the world. So I don't know what else to say about the jungle tour. I could go on, I could talk for 20 minutes just about the jungle tour. But I saw a lot of animals and had fun. I was traveling with some Estonians on this tour, and they spoke perfectly English. So it was great to have some company for a while, because most of the time in Peru I was really alone. And I went to Peru with no understanding of the Spanish language whatsoever. I knew sí, no, gracias, and I could count to 10. Learning Spanish along the way was difficult for me. And by the end of the trip, I think I became quite comfortable with the Spanish that I did know. I was able to ask for directions, I was able to get a hostel, I was able to get food, all the basic things I needed to do, but I certainly can't hold a conversation of any kind in Spanish. And I think one of my goals now that I'm home is to continue learning Spanish. So Peru was a good start to the Spanish language, but for most of the travelers there, it was interesting. They studied Spanish in high school or college, and they had a fairly good understanding, much better understanding of the language than I did. I was by far the worst person as far as language goes that I met in Peru. Everyone else could speak a whole lot better than I could. So anyways, a week in Puerto Maldonado. I came back to Cusco just for a couple days as a layover sort of thing, and then I took another 22-hour bus ride to the city of Ayacucho, which is in central Peru. It's one of the hardest cities to get to in Peru. Just the bus ride there, I took one bus, the first bus to Ayacucho. The first bus, it was broken, and every time the bus would come to a stop, the bus would completely turn off. So anytime we hit a stop sign or a signal or something, the bus would just completely turn off, and somebody would have to jump out, bang on the back with a rock for a couple minutes, and then the thing would take off again. and then the whole thing would start all over again once we came to a stop. So that bus was horrible. Then we got on a second bus. This bus couldn't get out of third gear, so we were going really, really slow through switchbacks in the mountains, dirt road, bumpy. Oh, it was crazy. And then we had to cross a river. We had to get out of the boat, cross a river in this little like wooden canoe that was like sinking because it was so full of water, and cross the river. Then we got on a third bus that finally took us to Ayacucho, and we arrived 22 hours later. Longest bus ride of my entire life. I don't know if it's the longest necessarily, but it's just definitely the most painful. Ayacucho didn't really impress me, and I wouldn't recommend it all that much. I liked, the next city I went to was Huanchaco, which had some awesome hiking outside of the city itself. The city I felt was much more relaxed than a lot of other Peruvian cities. I really liked Huanchaco. It's a short bus ride from, well, short, it's a long bus ride from Lima to Huanchaco. That's probably the easiest way to get there. And I'd recommend it if you like to hike and stuff. There's some good hiking there. I went from there through a bunch of different small little places in central Peru, back to Lima, and then to Juarez. I stayed a week in Juarez, which is an amazing city with some incredible, incredible hiking there. I only did a few little hikes while I was there, and I wish I had stayed in Juarez longer. If I were to go back to Peru, I would not go to any other city, probably, except for Juarez. And the one city I didn't go to, which was Iquitos, in the northern jungles. I'm trying to speed up my trip here, but I went to, after Juarez, I traveled to Trujillo, which is the third largest city in Peru. It's on the coast, north of Lima. And I really liked Trujillo. I wish I had stayed there longer. Another place I could have definitely stayed longer. It's a cool, laid-back colonial city, Spanish colonial city, about 15 kilometers from the beach. It's got a number of ruins mixed in with the city itself that aren't all that impressive, really. But the beach town of Huanchaco, I think, Huanchaco, is about 15 kilometers away. That's definitely a cool place to hang out for a few days. I spent 2 days there and would recommend it if you like to surf or just hang out at the beach. So from Trujillo, I traveled all the way up to the northern tip of Peru to the beach town of Mancora, which I had heard was like the place to be in Peru. Unfortunately, I hated Mancora. It's supposed to be like a fancy beach resort town, but fancy is definitely not the word. But I think if you're a beach person, Mancora would be the place to go if you like to surf and just hang out at the beach, get a suntan, and you don't mind paying slightly inflated prices for everything. Mancora is the place to go. I'm not a beach person. I'm more of a mountain person, to be honest, and my time in Mancora pretty much sucked. I walked around for a couple days. I sat on the beach a little bit and read my book. And then I got the hell out of there. By the time I reached Mancora, I was just shy of 5 months into the trip. And I think that a lot of the things that had been wearing on me about Peru, little things that bothered me, had all started compiling and building up. And by the time I reached Mancora, I was ready to go home. To be honest, I knew by the time I reached Mancora that my trip was over. I had planned to be in Peru for another month, but I was getting increasingly negative, getting upset at the locals kind of for asking me for money and just constantly asking for something from me was the main thing that bothered me. There were other things that bothered me though. I mean, not having a hot shower every day. The internet in Peru is so incredibly slow, and I'm not only using the internet to connect with friends and family back home, but I was working while I was in Peru as well. I do internet marketing. I own a small internet marketing company. So I'm traveling and trying to work at the same time. But the internet in Peru is so slow. It's like dial-up modem speeds. Like on average, I was getting 70 kilobytes per second, which is very, very slow. Here at home, I'm getting about 8 megabytes per second. So anyways, I reached Mancora and I'm feeling terrible. 5 months in Peru is a long, long time, and everybody, all the other travelers I met were spending maybe a month in Peru at top, you know, at most. So 5 months in Peru, and I think I just reached the boiling point. So I reached Mancora, and I had still had plans to go to Iquitos and the jungle and back to some other ruins and stuff, but I just couldn't bring myself to do it. I wanted to go home, and so that's essentially what I did. I took a bus from Mancora down to the next largest city, which was called Chiclayo. I spent 3 days there, and I was hoping that during those 3 days my mood would change, and that I'd say, oh, I'm gonna stay and just finish the trip like planned. That didn't happen though. After those 3 days, I jumped on a bus, rode back to Lima, and that night I was on a plane back home. So that happens sometimes. My main reason for coming home was that I had lost all my motivation for being there in the first place. When I go on these trips, like, I'm not typically like trying to mark off certain points just to be like, oh, I've been everywhere in Peru. Although that would be cool to say. For me, that's not much of a motivation to go anywhere or do anything just to say you've been there. I usually have to have some other motivator, whether it's I'm trying to learn a language, or I'm really interested in the place for whatever reason, or there's some hiking that I really want to do there. I don't know, whatever. There's got to be something more to it than just racking up the miles, essentially. And I was at this point where continuing the trip for another month would be essentially just that. It would be me just trying to rack up some more miles in Peru. And I didn't want to do that. There were more things back home that I wanted to do than I wanted to do in Peru at that particular moment. So I decided the trip's over. 5 months is good. 5 months is not a big difference from 6 months. And so I went home. Overall, gosh, I'm really cutting Peru short. It's so hard to sum up 5 months in just a brief couple moments. But overall, Peru was awesome, and I would totally go back. I would probably, if I did it differently, I would not go to any city at all. I'd probably go to Juarez, maybe. But I would just do the hiking and stuff around Juarez. I wouldn't spend too much time in the city itself. Although the city is very nice, but I would spend more time camping and hiking, because Peru has some amazing wilderness areas if you can get outside of the city. The problem is most people don't. So that's what I would do differently if I went back to Peru. I'd probably do, yeah, just less time in the cities and more time in the wilderness. And I would definitely not plan on getting any work done while I was there, because the internet absolutely sucks. So that's it. I don't know what else to say in just this brief few moments. There's a whole lot more I could say. If you're going to Peru and you have any questions, feel free to email me. I do know a lot about it. I think after 5 months I probably know more than most travelers. And I went to nearly every city in Peru except for Iquitos and one other city in the north. I'm blanking on the name. Starts with a Chichi or something like that. So that's it. Thanks for watching, guys. My name's Darren Alff. My website is bicycletouringpro.com. And if you want to send me an email and say hi or ask me a question, feel free to do so. That's it. Thanks, and adios.